You don't have to wait until spring to grow a garden. You can get out there and grow and be fruitful right in the middle of winter. Today I want to talk to you about onions and garlic. Onions and garlic are some of the coolest plants you can grow. I mean, literally. You can grow them in winter. Try doing that with a tomato. Most onions can handle temperatures down to 20 degrees. That means you can easily grow onions over winter in zones 6 through 9. And you can do it in zones 4 and 5 with a little extra protection against the cold. Garlic can survive temperatures down to negative 30 degrees. Onions and garlic add flavor to any meal. Look, you don't want a boring life, and you don't want boring food either. The two main ingredients to pump up the flavor of any of your meals are onion and garlic, and they're good for you too. Onions are packed with vitamins and minerals, but low in calories. They are a good source of vitamin C, which helps fight off the cold and flu and even COVID. Some studies indicate onions help reduce the risk of cancer. And garlic wards off vampires. Seriously though, garlic can lower cholesterol and blood pressure, fight heart disease, make bones stronger, and improve memory. And I've heard it helps deter mosquitoes as well. There's no better appetizer than the smell of onions and garlic simmering with dinner. Now, onions and garlic can take a long time to grow, but that's okay because you can start them in November or December. I've even started them last year in January, and they turned out just fine. But if you start them in November and December, they'll be ready in the springtime. Plus, after harvest, onions and garlic will keep all summer long, and you can replant the ones you don't use next year. How cool is that? It's really convenient to have a supply of onions and garlic on hand all the time. Don't have to run off down to the grocery store. You just run down to your onion supply, and there you are. You're ready to go and get cooking. I've been planting my onions and garlic in raised beds. Onions and garlic don't take up much space to grow, especially in a raised bed. I plant more than enough to supply my whole family for the whole year in a space as small as 30 square feet. That's about the size of a large dinner table. You can even grow onions and garlic in containers on your balcony or patio. Onions and garlic need a lot of sun. Don't plant them in a shady spot under a tree. I've been successful in my backyard, which gets about 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight each day. Also, this is very important for onions. There are 3 different types of onions. I'm not talking about varieties. There's lots of varieties of onions, but there are 3 main types of onions. There are short day onions that grow in southern regions where the days are shorter. Intermediate day onions grow in the middle of the United States. Long day onions grow up north where the days are longer. You want to pick the right type of onion for the place where you live, or you won't have much success growing your onions. Your onions may not bulb if you grow the wrong type of onions, or they may be very small. So be sure to check out what zone you live in and what type of onion you need, whether it be short day, intermediate day, or long day onions. In a raised bed like mine, I plant my onions and garlic about 4 inches apart and 1 to 2 inches deep. And I live in zone 7A. If you live in a very cold zone, it may help to plant your garlic a little deeper, maybe 3 or 4 inches. It may also help if you have a lot of cold weather, or if you find out a really bad cold snap is coming, to put a couple of inches of fluffy mulch over your garlic and onions. This will help insulate them in colder climates, or if you have a really bad cold snap. Like a few years back, I mean, where I live, we don't really get super cold weather, but a few years back, it went down to 0 degrees and it was super cold. I wasn't growing anything back then, so it didn't matter to me. But if that were to happen, you might want to put out some mulch, or even cover your onions and garlic with a protective tarp. Onions and garlic need to eat, just like you and me. So you have to feed them. You want to feed them a 20-00 fertilizer, like ammonium sulfate or ammonium nitrate. I plan to feed my onions with a fertilizer every 2 to 3 weeks during this growing season. Over the course of the season, I will use about a half a pound of fertilizer for my 30 square foot raised bed. Now, I'm not going to feed them all of that all at once, but I'm going to feed them a little bit every 2 to 3 weeks. And over the course of the whole season, it'll add up to about half of a pound. Onions and garlic also need to drink half an inch to an inch of water per week. More when it's really hot and less when it's cold. How do you know how much water your plants are getting? Here's how you find out. You're going to want to time how many seconds it takes to fill up a 5-gallon bucket with your favorite water hose and sprayer at the pressure that you normally use for watering, and using the setting that you normally use. I use the shower spray setting for most of my watering. Now, take the number of seconds it took you to fill up that 5-gallon bucket and divide it by 10. That's how many seconds you need to spray each square foot of your garden. So let's say I have a 3 by 10 foot raised bed garden. That's 30 square feet. It takes 180 seconds to fill up my 5-gallon bucket at the pressure I use. 180 divided by 10 is 18. That means it takes 18 seconds to water 1 square foot with 1 inch of water. Or it will take me about 540 seconds to water my 3 by 10 raised bed. That's about 9 minutes. Now listen, you don't want to give your plants a whole week's worth of water in one day, right? I mean, you don't drink like that, do you? No one gets up on Monday and drinks a whole week's worth of water and then doesn't drink anything for the rest of the week. You just don't do that. It would kill you, and it'll kill your plants too. Your plants don't want to drink everything all at once. So for me, what I typically do is water maybe 3 times a week. And so if I'm going to water my plants 3 times in a week, then I should probably water the bed for about 3 minutes each time I water, because 3 times 3 equals 9 minutes. And that should be an inch of water for the whole bed in a whole week. So give your plants a third of their weekly needs every other day. And if it's cold, remember, they won't be as thirsty. But if it's hot out, then they're just like you, and they're going to need more water. In an extremely hot and dry Georgia summer where I live, I may water my plants every day. Maybe just water them a little bit less. But it's best to water it in the morning so that your plants can drink all day long. And then they'll stay dry at night, which will help to deter fungus and rotting. Now be careful, don't overwater your onions and garlic, or they may rot in the ground and you'll have all kinds of problems. And you don't want that. Now listen, all this is just estimates, okay? I'm not gonna stand out there in my garden with a timer in my hand and be very precise about how long I'm watering. Are you gonna do that? We're not gonna do that. Gardening's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be so technical. So what I sort of do as I water is I count 1, 2, 3, 4. So I might count up to 7 for 1 square foot and then move to another square foot. And I just do that until I sort of get used to the pace of how long it takes me to water a certain area. After a while, you may not need to count. You'll just sort of get a feel for it. And you can just enjoy being outside in God's creation and spending time in your garden, thinking about how much enjoyment you're getting out of being there, and also thinking about what a wonderful thing it will be to harvest those beautiful, delicious onions and garlic when the time comes. One more thing you need to know. You need to get a rain gauge if you don't already have one. A rain gauge catches water when it rains and tells you how many inches fell. And this is vital information for your garden. It tells you how much natural water your plants are getting. I keep a spreadsheet on Google Sheets to track how much rain we get each week. You can also just write it down in a notebook, but I like using Google Sheets because it's free and I can get it on my smartphone and I can look it up anytime, wherever I am, because I always have my smartphone with me. But you could just write it down in a notebook if that works for you. Now, hopefully, you'll get enough rain throughout the week and you won't even need to water. But if not, your rain gauge will help you to gauge how much water you need to give from your water hose. So as you're looking at your rain gauge, you'll see how much rain you're receiving in that week. And then if you don't get a half an inch to an inch of water, you can supplement by watering with your water hose. All right, so we've got the onions planted here on this side and in the middle, and then we have garlic, 2 kinds of garlic planted on the other side. So here on this side, we planted some onion plants that I had shipped in from Hoss Tools. And then in the middle, we planted, these are plethora sweet onions here. And I actually have like 2 of the yellow Stuttgartner onions that I planted last year that made it through without rotting, and then they started to sprout, so I decided to plant them here. I probably have some more inside that I can plant as well, and now plant them somewhere else, somewhere out here in the garden. But I wanted to get these in the ground first. These were plants that were shipped in a bundle from Hoss Tools, and they came in and looked pretty good. Got them in the ground there. They're a little bit ragged looking right now, but I'm hoping that they're gonna really pop back to life. In the middle is sweet agent sweet onions, and those are another sweet type of Vidalia onion. And I grew those. I got the seeds from Hoss Tools, and then I planted the seeds in seed trays, and then I transplanted them here into the garden. They actually look pretty good, so we'll see how that all goes. Then on this side, I planted some elephant garlic that I received in from Hoss Tools. And then on this side, I planted some, it was a mixture of California softneck garlic and also some Serbian hardneck garlic that I grew myself last year. And then I had cloves left over, and so I planted those here, and hopefully those will come back next year as well. I'm sort of building up my own stock of onions and garlic, and at some point, you know, unless I want to, I could just live off of the stock that I have and just keep it going like that. That's a cool thing about onions. You can multiply them yourself, and you can keep growing them and become totally independent. I do have some more hardneck and softneck garlic, and I'm going to probably plant those around in some of these other plots. But I wanted to go ahead and get this one done and get it in. Now I need to put a fence around this to keep the chickens and rabbits and all those, and the dogs and those sort of things out, just to kind of protect it. The onions aren't as big of a deal. The chickens love to eat cabbage and broccoli and collards and lettuce and that sort of thing. So I really have to be careful and protect that stuff from the chickens. But I've got some fencing, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it around here. I like using this plastic fencing like you see on this garden bed. It's just easier to manage than the chicken wire and the metal fencing that I used to use. It's just easier to manage, and it's just, I don't actually attach it, just sort of hooked on a screw that I screw into those little stakes of wood. And that way I can take it off whenever I need to and get total access to the bed. But that's what I found. People ask all the time, how do you keep pests like rodents and animals and stuff out of your garden? Thankfully, I haven't had any problems with deer, because deer could get in that if they wanted to. But as far as rabbits and chickens go, and even squirrels haven't been a problem for me. This has been what works best for me. So I don't know, what works for you? Share a comment about how do you keep rabbits and dogs and squirrels and deer out of your garden. Maybe your comment might help me or help somebody else. But I'm gonna go ahead and get to work and finish putting the fencing on this, and then I'm gonna do some more work out in the garden, get the rest of that garlic planted, and yeah, so anyway, I'm gonna get to it. Now, some people will suggest to grow onions or garlic that you get from the grocery store. And I get it. It's cheap and it's easy, but I don't recommend it. And here's why. Those bulbs you get from the grocery store may not be the variety that you need in your growing area. In fact, they may have been grown in China for all you know. Do you even know exactly what variety they are? And what type of onion are they? Are they short day, long day, or intermediate day onions? Plus, they likely were sprayed with a chemical to keep them from sprouting in the store, and that will also keep them from sprouting and growing well in your garden. And onions and garlic take a long time to grow, up to 8 months. Wouldn't it be a shame if you gambled by planting unknown onions and garlic from the grocery store and spend 4 to 8 long months growing them, only to fail because you didn't start with the best possible plants? It's up to you. You can try it and you might be successful. But I would rather do it right to start with and give myself the very best chance of success. Onions and garlic give your meals incredible flavor and smell. They add beneficial vitamins and minerals to make your meal more nutritious. People who follow Jesus live flavorful lives full of love and light. We don't settle for the meager fare the world deems acceptable. Our spiritual palates are more sensitive, and we found better bread than the world has and that the world doesn't appreciate. We delight in Christ, the bread of life. Like salt that brings out the flavor of food, Christians faithful to Christ strive to make the world a better place. Because Christ lives in us, we bring hope and life to a dead, flavorless world. Christ gives our lives meaning and purpose so that all who encounter us hunger for a relationship with the life-giving Savior of the world. We are like those onions and garlic that simmer on the stove, making the whole house hungry for dinner. So, do you follow Jesus? If not, I hope you will find out more about him. I hope you will consider following him. He will give you eternal life, and he will make your life in this world full of flavor. And if you already know Jesus, if you already are following him, how can you serve him by working to make the world a better place? Who can you bless today? Who can you help? How can you show love? What kind of word can you give someone who needs encouragement? What can you do to make the world a better place? Think about it. That's my word for today. Now, let's all get out there and grow and be fruitful.